So he has a rare dual identity to cybersecurity, a PhD lecturer turned cloud native GRC leader. After nearly a decade at Convoy, he's become a vocal critic of checkbox compliance, arguing that governance must live inside the code, not above it. He's currently building AI compliance tools that capture something that most models entirely fail to actually pick up. How do you bridge the gap practically day to day?
I wish I had this all figured out and I could tell you a 5 easy step on how to do this, right? So I think we, security defenders and all that, we look at things from a different point of view because we're seeing all the alerts in our systems, all the vibe coding flaws that end up as vulnerabilities or threats. So instead of automating something tedious, go back to the first principles. What do you need to do? You need to gather information. Well, okay, you gather information, you can speak with people and understand, or you can crawl their documentation, or you can crawl their code and figure out more context this way than sending a questionnaires and having the people fill it with AI.
Hello and welcome to the show. This time we are bigger and stronger. Happy to have you all on the show, and definitely there's a lot to pick from this conversation. Today we have Pierre Paul. Have I pronounced it well?
You did.
That's the first take, by the way. I didn't even ask him how to pronounce his name. So he has a rare dual identity to cybersecurity, a PhD lecturer turned cloud native GRC leader. After nearly a decade at Convoy, he's become a vocal critic of checkbox compliance, arguing that governance must live inside the code, not above it. He's currently building AI compliance tools that capture something that most models entirely fail to actually pick up. Now, welcome to the show, Pierre.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Do you prefer Pierre or Paul? Pierre Paul.
I actually prefer Pepe.
Pepe.
Yeah.
Because of the PP. Or okay. So
yeah,
Pepe.
so I'm native French speaker, and in French it's Pepe, so I'm used to hear that in French.
Okay.
And that's less awkward than PP, which is putting some people off.
Yeah, because if you say PP, someone will think that you want to go to the toilet. So yeah.
Yeah.
So now, for those who don't know you, for starters, who is PP? I'm finding it hard to call it Pierre. Yes, who is Pierre?
I'm an experienced GRC practitioner, learning as we go in this crazy AI evolving world. I've been working in the field for, as you said, nearly a decade now. I did a transition, which might be of interest to the audience, and I know we will get into a bit later. Career transitioner, started out in the academic world, dreamed of being a writer, and turned myself to GRC to write risks instead of novels. But risk in itself might be seen as some kind of fiction, if you will.
Yeah.
And I've been, for the past few years, I've been vocal online about my opinions on the state of our practice. So I operate both the TPRM and the customer trust side. So I see basically both sides of...
Could you explain those two? TPRM and...
Yeah, correct. So I work for a software as a service AI provider. And when your company wants to purchase those services, just like they purchase a software as a service from Microsoft or ChatGPT, they will do a third-party risk management review. So this is TPRM, third-party risk management. And that usually involves some type of audit.
Okay.
That these days, and I know this is going to be one of the topics today, that these days mostly still takes the form of a questionnaire. An Excel, huge spreadsheet full of generic questions.
True.
Where we answer basically yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And whenever there's a no, there's a VLOOKUP that creates a risk, and that somehow gets managed through contracts and requirements and audits.
Yeah.
And so on my side, I'm on the receiver end of those few hundred questionnaires a year from customers. And I'm also internally in our own GRC program, I'm building that practice where we're a pretty typical company where we have a few hundred vendors, and then we manage the risks to those vendors.
Okay.
And since I have both visions, This is what really brought me to seeing some issues overall with the GRC practice as a whole. And I've also seen some practices through my conversations, through sometimes the attitude of people, through all kinds of threads, online communities, even Reddit, where I saw a problem in GRC where we rely too much on templates and frameworks. And I don't know if you have trained for CISSP. I know many people in your audience are certainly trying to get their CISSP. And of course, the handbook, what I was seeing was taken a bit too much as a hard reference, meaning we have in our practice, I think the viral expression I used was framework parrots. So this is one of the few ways I've gone viral, is calling like our practice full of framework parrots, and that's what I'm trying to break away from.
So speaking of framework parrots, what do you actually mean by that?
Yeah, so essentially our industry is governed by a bunch of frameworks that are inevitable, right? You collect credit cards, you have to comply with you collect health data in the United States, you have to comply with HIPAA. You want to do business in Europe, you certainly have to comply with ISO 27001. Sorry. And therefore, these frameworks all come with a few hundred requirements that you have to do. So you have to encrypt your data at rest, encrypt your data in transit. And what I was seeing was people taking that at face value and saying, okay, this is what we do. We ensure that our organizations implement those controls. And how we do that is we send more spreadsheets, more questionnaires, so people actually check the check mark. And then we loop them in interviews, asking, like grilling them, like a police interrogation on the 100 things they should be doing. And I thought this was inefficient, and this was not like the correct way to bring solid value.
Yeah, that's true. Because if you look at it, if you just give them a spreadsheet, check this, and this, and this, and this, okay. Then you come bashing them, why isn't this here? Why isn't this there? Or it'll be a back and forth of, by the way, this is there, but however, this is this. I find it not effective because at the end of the day, it doesn't help with the purpose of actually helping behavior change and also understanding that, you know what, this is key and this needs to be done, not because of only wanting maybe Visa to allow you to use their cards, but also for security as a whole, we require this. So I feel like most of the times people don't look at that bigger picture of the holistic way things are supposed to be in order for something to work. Yeah, that's exactly an interesting take. Yeah. So let's dive into the question. So you have a PhD in literature and you're known for your senior GRC leadership in cybersecurity. That's not how your career actually, most probably, you would have predicted it to become. How did that journey unfold, and what surprised you the most about that transition?
Yeah, so this is, in a sense, a feel-good story, but it does not start with a feel-good moment. I was struggling in academia, struggling to land teaching positions, struggling as a writer. My novels were rejected everywhere, and I had like professional anxiety. I had kids at that point by my late 20s. So I was like, okay, something's gotta give. I need to do something else to provide for my family. And so I turned back and said, well, IT is hot. Let's get into technology. So I did a computer science degree, and I did that at a time that the industry was red hot. So I got hired like on my second year of college, got an intern. Like, it's a different time. Like, at the time, companies were bidding for our internships. So this has completely changed now. But at the time, this is what was happening. So I was lucky to get a job right off the bat and be up and running. And afterwards, so of course, like everybody, I wanted to be a pen tester first. But then I realized, okay, I can be an average pen tester, or perhaps like a very good GRC specialist, because I'm into words, I'm into talking with people, I'm into doing these kinds of things, talking with you. Yeah. So let's let's specialize there, even though it's not the sexiest or the most interesting or the one with the biggest earning potential. But this is what I chose based on that background. Now, the big warning, of course, and before I let you, big warning is that the market has completely changed. And what I did like a decade ago is much harder today because there are way many people who heard the stories like mine. And as such, like there's just really a lot of people. So I just don't want to like carry on the dream of, hey, by the way, cyber is here. We need you. We do need talented people, but the market is very hard.
Yeah, because the demands are hard and the expectations are unrealistic. Yes, that's the biggest challenge in cybersecurity. So for listeners who actually don't know, are new to cybersecurity and they actually want to know what exactly GRC is, how would you describe it in plain language?
Yeah, I love that one because this is one of the least known areas of cybersecurity because it's boring. It's very boring, actually. If you compare with, attackers, the most well-known ones, the red teams, they break stuff and they figure out vulnerabilities and they really help our organizations by simulating attackers, and it's super sexy. And then you have the defenders. So I think a lot of our listeners here are on the defender side. This is the one where we have the biggest number of people. So they're the ones 24/7 monitoring our system, trying to catch attackers, finding needles in haystacks, cutting through the noise. This is what we have in SOC, Security Operations Center. And then on the other side of defenders, we will have the builders, the ones that are implementing the detection tooling, implementing the hardening measures, implementing the access management, etc. So where's GRC in that? So GRC is more, we used to call that a green team. Green as in we follow the money. So GRC is more on the broader, I would say, strategic level where we decide where investment should go, which tools should we use, and how we take your work as a defender, as an attacker, and organize that into a coherent narrative that we can present to certification bodies, to regulators, to customers, and to senior management to show this is where you invest your money in security, this is the protection that we can provide, and this is where you should put money next, essentially.
That's interesting. What area of GRC is usually the most complicated? Is it the first part? Because people usually assume that if you're a GRC person, you should be knowing the whole of PCI DSS rules off head or something like that. What does it look like?
Yes and no. So I'm careful here because this is what people default to. Like you want to work in GRC and they start memorizing like the 400 controls of NIST, the 93 controls of ISO 27001. And yes, like you want to work in, I don't know, filmmaking. You got to have watched the classic films. Okay, you watch a classic film, that doesn't make you like director of a movie.
Sure.
But you kind of have to know them. So it's not a bad idea to memorize PCI DSS. But the hard part, of course, is dealing with the shades of gray behind them. Because what the friction comes in real life is the requirements are always general and ambiguous because they need to apply to everybody. And so you have to make them specific to your context. And this is where I see some GRC professionals struggle in that they may lack the ability to connect a requirement to a very specific detailed engineering concept or constraint or framework or component check. Like, oh, we cannot scan this code in SAST because we use the wrong package manager. Well, okay, so what is a package? What is a package manager? This is sometimes the gap that we need to be able to bridge a bit better, I would say. Now, bringing this back to your question, the hardest part is, in my opinion, the governance part, because you are there trying to establish rules and a decision-making structure. So in practice, that means herding cats 100% of the time, having people with competing priorities and trying to bring some accountability, some responsibility in there ownership, and it's very hard because GRC we're basically saying, oh, by the way, you own this, and sometimes people don't want to own something, and this is where we get into politics, and I think this is where we can be useful. Like if your listeners are thinking, oh geez, I love reverse engineering, I love figuring out new vulnerabilities, but I don't want to deal with office politics. Well, we love this.
Yeah, true. So you've been in one organization for over 7 years, and you've been job hopping in terms of different roles. How has it been like?
Yeah, job hopping within the same organization.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So staying long as an organization has one massive upside, which is that you are able to build long-lasting relationships that in turn make a longer-lasting impact. So this is the huge upside. The huge downside is that you may have tunnel vision and seeing only the way we do things at one organization and accumulate a lot of internal lore that doesn't have value outside of your organization. So this is the trade-off. You have a high impact, but you lack perspective. Now, if you've been in your organization for a long while, the biggest advice I can give you, and I had tremendous value out of that, is to network, find people like you in other organizations, listen to podcasts like this one, and try to figure out like what's going on outside and whether you're into your own head or not. That's been helpful. About the job hopping, changing roles, changing departments, a lot of it is due to the fast-moving nature of organizations and needing to adapt. I would say, like, I think I would be very typical in that organizations change so much, embrace the change and go ahead and try to
learn as much
make yourself seen.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. You've openly critiqued performative compliance, the idea of ticking boxes that create real security. What does that actually look like in practice, and where do you see it most often? Yeah,
so the biggest quote I use almost every day and that I will use today is our approach is make it secure and the compliance will follow. This is really the message I'm trying to drill down whenever I speak with an engineer or architect or a developer. Make it secure, do the right thing. Think about how attackers can get into your system, do the right things. And me, afterwards, I'm going to review what you've done and I'm going to take those measures and translate that into the compliance. But okay, sounds great. Everybody agrees with that. In real life, this is super hard because the default is, okay, I'm super focused. I need to make my app work. I need to hit an uptime and I need to manage my costs. And now my manager tells me I have to worry about security. So, hey, security, please tell me, where do I begin? Help me out here. And so if you come and you give a checklist, people tend to like having that checklist. So like the checklist becomes the convenient option that doesn't really solve anything, but that helps everybody. If you understand what I mean? Like the developer, okay, he's got his or she, they've got their implementation task. We've got something super simple that we can simply file away and everybody wins. But we haven't taken the time to really think about what are we doing here? How do we prevent the bad guys from accessing our system? This is our priority in the end. That's what everybody listening to this believes in. We want to protect our systems, make sure that whatever people use our apps for, they can use it with peace of mind. That's what we believe in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. At the end of the day, we have to look at that instead of just ticking boxes. And that chimes us into the next question of you've described a split between vibe coders who treat AI like a slot machine and a GRC team still operating like it's 2019. How do you bridge the gap practically day to day?
I wish I had this all figured out and I could tell you a 5 easy step on how to do this, right? So I think we, security defenders and all that, we look at things from a different point of view because we're seeing all the alerts in our systems, all the vibe coding flaws that end up as vulnerabilities or threats, the weird behaviors on our machines that are happening. And vibe coding, so this is why I brought in the slot machine analogy here, because we feel overwhelmed and we feel the pressure that comes with that, and we might feel like the people are not thinking straight because they're into their
they're
vibe
not
coding
doing
thing.
what you want.
But at the same time, those AI tools have tremendous benefits. And saying if we operate like 2019, that means we refuse to become efficient. We refuse to gain operational benefits. We refuse to review our processes and use agents to, like, we don't need questionnaires anymore. We have tools to scrape the public data. We have tools to understand gaps into publicly available documentation. So if we refuse to embrace those new technologies that make us more efficient, then we're on the other end where we're not benefiting enough.
Okay, that's makes sense, because at the end of the day, it's supposed to help automate work. So if you don't use it, it makes your job like much harder. But
there's an added wrinkle here, and it's the faster horses analogy. So if we automate a process that in of itself doesn't have value, okay, you have AI filling your questionnaire, okay, but the questionnaire in of itself is not interesting. So instead of automating something tedious, go back to the first principles. What do you need to do? You need to gather information. Well, okay, you gather information, you can speak with people and understand, or you can crawl their documentation, or you can crawl their code and figure out more context this way than sending a questionnaires and having the people fill it with AI. And I've even had, like last week, I've even had an occasion where I kind of had like an intake form that was filled by AI, that was parsed by AI, and we were looking at each other with, it was an IT specialist, and we're like, okay, what are we doing? Your AI is reviewing my AI. Can we talk with each other? Like, this is the world we're in right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you've built an AI compliancy decision agent that captures human heuristic and not just policy documents. I guess that's the one which you were using for that. So can you walk us through why feeding an LLM policy file isn't actually enough, and what is the missing ingredient really?
Yeah, that's become my very obsession, my personal obsession these days, because yes, AI makes stuff up. Like, everybody who used these knows it by now. So the layer is, okay, well, we need to feed it appropriate data. Okay, it's great at summarizing data, but it's not great as an interpreter, an analyst. So we need to up its game. And this is where I bring in my ideas around adding heuristics, about adding experience, about adding my outputs. And so what I do, and I'm having fun with it, I use voice mode. I have AI job interview me for minutes, hours, and then I ask it, okay, what did you learn about my thought process? What can you get out of how I interpreted the problems, and how can you recycle that so somebody who doesn't necessarily have my knowledge, my experience, can benefit from it?
You've taught 75 hours of identity and access management courses at, I don't know how to pronounce that name, CGIP. How do you pronounce it?
Let's call it our local community college.
Yeah, the local community college. What is the single biggest misconception students walk in with when it comes to cybersecurity careers, and what do you leave with them after them actually attending your sessions?
Yeah, so glad you bring in my teaching background. I'm gonna have this fall my fourth cohort, so I'm relatively new to this space. Was happy my last session. I think everybody passed, so I'm really glad to have them go on to their professional lives. I think the biggest misconception from my perspective, of course, because I'm more on the politics side, as I've mentioned, is that they're really looking at things purely from a technical standpoint. And the other misconception I would say is how much hands-on versus talking that they're going to do.
Yeah, that's a big catch-up for many of the young people. So how do you balance that, by the way?
In my teaching?
Yes, in your teaching.
Yeah, in my teaching, so I try to give, and now with generative AI, it's becoming increasingly harder, but I try to give at least one assignment that is pure analysis and pure advocacy. So basically, they have to pick a password manager for their company, and they have to sell their company on why do we need a password manager, which password manager we need, given the technology background that I create, and try to sell it in an analysis document.
Interesting way of selling it. Now, when it comes to things like GRC, how do you package it?
Package the
The
communications
training.
aspect of it?
Yeah,
Training.
yeah, the communication, especially for the young people. How do you bring it up, which is still entertaining at the same time, not drawing them away because they want something fast-paced, they want to sample things. You get my point?
For students, you mean?
Yes, for students.
That's a good one, to make them fast-paced. So my courses are about 60-70% hands-on, usually assignments in the lab, Windows, Linux, and I try to get them to do little projects that have an ending.
Okay.
But I won't say I'm able to gamify it yet. Maybe in the future.
AI is there, so it's possible. So for someone who wants to actually become a GRC specifically, what's one of that skills or mindsets they should develop that nobody is telling them about?
Interesting. Well, this is the Cyber Weekly, right? So I imagine actually the listeners here have an edge because they keep themselves updated, you know?
Yes.
And that's probably the main thing, and even something people underestimate, how much you have to learn on your own time. Because no employer is going to give you the necessary time to get yourself up to speed. AI is there. It changes everything. It changes all the time. Suddenly we have a new model. Suddenly it's not available anymore. Suddenly your pricing strategy changed, which means you're changing tools overnight. And there's a new feature. Suddenly it does image generation. Suddenly it generates music. How should you govern that? How do you have your organization figure that out? Suddenly your AI can control your computer. What guardrails do you put? This is all research that happens almost in real time that you have to figure out in real time, often evenings and weekends.
Yeah, that's the horrible truth of nowadays.
And I'm gonna share. I always tell that story, but the best piece of advice, job advice that I ever got was from Mark Manson. The subtle art of not giving an F guy.
Yeah,
so I read that
this book. It's nice.
And so it's basically like he tells the story of how he wanted to be a guitarist when he was in his early 20s, because he always dreamed about like being on stage with fans clamoring for him. But he never thought about the fact that 95% of his days would be to practice. And he hated practice. But that's not how you become a great guitarist. You have to practice all the time, and practice has to feel like the greatest thing you want to do. And so I think like the best advice is do not choose a job for what you want, but for what sucks about it and you're ready to tolerate. And so what sucks in our practice, like you and I, it's that it's currently having to keep yourself updated nights and weekends. Otherwise, you cannot keep up. Yeah, so this is probably like, because I figured there's lots of people listening who would want to break into cybersecurity or break into GRC. And I think the message here is the market right now is hard. You've got AI companies downsizing. It's probably a cycle. It will probably pick up back where it's a more favorable market. But it might be hard right now to land a job. You are not alone. You are not abnormal to have trouble finding a job in this market. Even experienced people right now have trouble. So there's a bit of a drawback in that if you're in for the opportunity alone, that might feel super hard. But if you're really passionate about it, if you're willing to self-learn, engage, and improve, while this is a hard time, if you have the opportunity to do it, you will be able to find something. But it's just a hard market right now. You are not an anomaly. It's just very specific phenomenon. And be careful of anybody who tells you, do my bootcamp and you'll find a job. Nobody can guarantee you that in this current market.
First of all, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great having you on the show. I've learned a lot concerning GRC and how best to understand things from a GRC perspective, and also how best to incorporate it in my normal day-to-day work, and understanding how things work on a GRC scope. And if I'm planning on joining GRC, I'm not sure about that yet. Yes, how to start. Now, if people want to find your work, I've seen you're very live on LinkedIn. You should have videos. So if people want to find you, where can they find you? Which social medias, and where can people get a hold of your work?
Yeah, mostly on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I post on YouTube Shorts, but essentially this is the same content that is done for LinkedIn.
Okay, so LinkedIn is the best place. And we actually have it in our show notes. So be sure to check out our show notes. Like, subscribe, go check out Pepe on all the platforms. And thank you all for coming on the show. Thank you, Pepe, and have a good one.